Hello and welcome to another Evony video on buffs. In the previous video, we covered the differences of attack, defense, and HP buffs for different types of troops. Going back to the main formula, we noted that flat buffs don't get debuffed and they become more important when the base stat is lower. So flat buffs are better for low tier troops and percentages are better for high tiers. So far, it is rather straightforward, but it becomes complicated in practical cases. It's easy to compare a single layer of T14s to a single layer of T1s. But what about a keep defense with layers of all types and different sizes? The common suggestion you have probably heard is that percentages are good for top heavy keeps and flat buffs are good for bottom heavy ones. But when we say better, what big of a difference are we talking about? What do bottom heavy and top heavy exactly mean? At which point should you switch your focus from flat to percentages, or do you even have to? These are the questions I will try to address in this video. First, let's quickly talk about where you can get flat buffs. The biggest source is equipment refinements. Then you have dragon refinements. Monarch gears have flat buffs. In the academy, there is one flat buff item for each troop type and attribute. In the coronation fountain, you find 3 flat buffs, but they only apply in rallies. You get attack flats from flexible specialties, and the siege military tactics can give you attacking attack flat buff for siege in the battlefields. So there aren't many ways to get them, it's mainly from refinements. The maximum value of flat buffs in equipment refinement is fixed for all equipment better than Dragon. So Ares, Achaemenid, and Civilization equipment, and the Imperial and Parthian ones. You can get attack buffs from the weapon and the rank, defense from boots and armor, and HP from helmets and leg armor. Here are the maximum values you can get. For these, I will refer to as red. You can get a maximum percentage buff of 25%, and for civilization equipment, this goes up to 30%. So you can get 4 of each on each equipment, so a total of 8 for each attribute. I'm going to use these maximum refines as the reference to make comparisons. Let's take these and calculate the relative value of flat buffs as compared to percentage buffs on as one single refinement. So this is what it looks like for mounted HP for a red equipment. You can see that for T1s, flat buffs are almost 20 times better than percentage buffs. That drops rather quickly, but interestingly remains higher than 1 up to T11s. But remember that debuffs can cut percentage buffs down to half. So if you're fully debuffed by the enemy, flat buffs are better all the way and including T15s. It's almost equal for T16s. For civilization equipment, percentages are better, but only a little bit. Still up to T14s, flats work better. This relative value remains pretty much the same across all the different attributes and all the different troop types. So you can already see that high tiers that make percentages better are just the very, very high tiers. Now let's take a closer look. Let's consider a hypothetical keep with a T1 mounted wall and about 3.6 billion troop power. So it has 500 million T1 calves, 100 million T1 ground and archer, and layers of 500,000 up to T11s. It has a 5.5 million ground and mounted, 9 million archers, and 3 million siege. For siege, it has more T11s instead of T12s. Now let's compare HP percentage and flat buffs. Each row summarizes three stats when there's only one refinement buff applied. For percentage buffs, I consider two cases: zero debuff and maximum debuff. So it's very obvious here that flats are way better. For HP, we're mainly concerned about ground and mounted. And as you can see, flats are 12 to 24 times better depending on how much percentages are debuffed. If you look at the total stats for all troops, you can see a single flat refinement can increase it by about 100%. Now, if we look at attack, we see a similar thing. Because of the huge number of T1 mounted troops, giving them flat attack does the most in increasing your stats. Though you generally want rearguard attack, it's probably better to get those buffs from elsewhere and focus the refines on your T1 wall. So what if you go with grounds instead? It's basically the same thing. Getting flats for ground is your best choice. There are some interesting differences though when you look at your Vanguard HP and total stats. Because grounds have a huge HP, but mounted have higher attack in their base stats, and the relative value of flats is basically the same, the flat buffs similarly have a different overall impact. Grounds add more HP, and mounted add more attack. If you want to decide between these two, I will try to make another video to cover the differences between T1 mounted and ground, because other factors should also be considered. So now, what if you don't have a T1 wall at all? So let's take the T1s and make all of them just layers of 500,000 as well. This would be a rather top-heavy keep now, with 2.2 billion troop power. And you can see it's a bit more archer heavy. So you might expect that now percentages should be clearly better. Well, they're not. For HP buffs, as soon as you get more than 8% debuffed, ground flats become better. And for mounted, with 2% debuff, flats are already doing better. The same thing for attack. 13% debuff, and anything beyond that makes flats superior to percentages for archers. And this is for civilization here. If you compare with 25% buffs, flats are always better even without debuffs. So basically, you should always use flats for your defense because you want to be able to defend against the biggest keep that might hit you, and they'll most likely debuff you to the maximum. So this was defense with all troops. Now what about single type marches? This would be when you attack, defend in a building, or when you're reinforcing. So here we get really top heavy. Anything below T12 is just layers. For a typical ground march up to T14, this is how HP and attack percentage and flat buffs compare. So flats can still work pretty well, especially if you are going against someone with high debuffs. For archers, for an archer march, flats are slightly better because the marches have more T12s than higher tiers. And for mounted, it falls somewhere in between. So as you can see, even for attack and single type marches that are top heavy, flat can become better than percentages if you're expecting your enemy to have high debuffs against you. So overall, you can see that flats seem to have a lot of value that I believe many underrate in the game. This would be it for this video. In the next one, I'm going to talk a bit more about defense and in particular about defense generals. So stay tuned for that and see you then.